7th of March 2022. We are inside the barn today because Oklahoma is bipolar and it has gone from 80 degrees to the lower 30s in the last 48 hours or so. And it's incredibly windy outside. So for the sake of audio clarity, we are in here. Hope everybody's having a good Monday morning thus far. There are a lot of indicators and threats to look at today. We're going to do so. Before we do so, I'm going to share some intel from the Bear Nation. Your email address for your first person human information, human intelligence is admin. No. Best words. It is Monday, isn't it? Let's start over. Send your intel to intel@bearindependent.com. There we go. Caffeinate, right? Beautiful. Good morning, New Hope Farmstead. Prayers out for y'all. Intel blurbs from the Bear Nation. By the way, if you're on Patreon, you have one hell of a write-up this morning on everything that's going on. If you're not on Patreon, you don't. Military. Quote, I live and work as a carpenter in Jackson County, North Carolina. This area never has any military activity. Within the last week, all on separate occasions, I have seen semis hauling Hemet 10-ton trucks and multiple Humvees. Today there was a flyover of four clearly identifiable AH-64 Apache helicopters. All mentioned vehicles seem to be heading east. I'm guessing this means movement of equipment and vehicles from Central Army bases towards the coast, ? Another one, and this is important for supply chain reasons. I'm going to touch on this a little bit in a moment. I'm a subscriber from Italy. Ciao. I recently found out that the main Italian importer of North American rescue products and other tactical medical gear is located in a town near me in northern Italy. Last week, I contacted them by email to ask if I could order a cat tourniquet and a quick clot combat gauze directly from them. I'd gladly order a refuge medical kit, but the international shipping and taxes would kill me. They replied only yesterday, apologizing for the delay, but as the nice lady clerk that answered told me, their office has been literally on fire following the start of the war in Ukraine. Some government agencies placed huge orders that basically wiped out all of their stock. Since my order was so small compared to the others they recently received, she told me she'll do her best to fulfill it, but she said that they now are having problems sourcing even a single item. Apparently, governments in Europe are preparing for the worst and stockpiling gear for a major conflict. And I can tell you without going into great detail, the end of last week, Friday of this past week, I spent the entire day on the phone. And if you know me, you know I don't really enjoy talking on the phone. I spent the entire day on the phone talking to our primary, secondary, and tertiary suppliers for Refuge Medical. And North American Rescue, 30 to 60 days on replenishment. TACMEN Solutions, 30 to 60 days on replenishment. McKesson, which is one of the largest companies in the world when it comes to medical gear, they got some stuff, but a lot of it's out. Medline, another huge company. They have some stuff, but a lot of it's out. I've been telling you all for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, get your orders in. RefugeMedical.com. Use promo code BEARNATION. We are incredibly invested in inventory so that we can fill your orders. And I promise you, if you place an order, we'll fill it. If you've placed an order, we will fill it. But it's getting weird, man. I had one of the vice presidents of North American Rescue on the phone telling me the volume of stuff that is being sent to Eastern Europe right now is insane. Insane. Additionally, Team 5, which is a SOFMED group, Special Operations Forces medical team that ourselves, Refuge Medical, and others sponsor, they are currently in Nepal, and when they leave Nepal, they are headed to Poland to receive Ukrainian refugees. There are many other organizations, charitable organizations, volunteer organizations that are headed to Eastern Europe to receive refugees as well. So, I don't fearmonger y'all. I don't doom porn y'all. I just tell you the truth. And I've been telling you for weeks, get serious about this stuff. And I'm telling you now, get serious about this stuff. Okay? So, refugemedical.com. Your promo code is BearNation. Let's see, the brief. Let's do the brief. We'll read a little bit of the news, and we have some stuff to talk about, specifically life number 34 that has been saved with the Refuge Medical Kit. So we'll touch on that at the end of the brief. Praise Yah, life number 34. Bear Independent Brief, 7 March 22. Since the start of the invasion, roughly 1.5 million people have fled Ukraine, most of which are women and children. The UN Refugee Agency Commissioner, Filippo Grandi, called it the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. Al Jazeera reported that men between the ages of 18 and 60, quote, have been prevented from leaving Ukraine to stay and fight, end quote. In Russia, thousands of anti-war demonstrators have been arrested, including children who laid flowers at the Ukrainian embassy in Moscow. NATO is reporting that Russia is utilizing, quote, cluster bombs and widely banned artillery, end quote, violating international law. Good morning, Hunter Seeker. Officials around the globe are warning that the brutality and lethal nature of Russia's attacks are only going to worsen. Now, we have much more to this report, but I want to pause here for a moment to point out that if NATO is reporting that Russia is using cluster bombs and banned artillery, as Firminant Liquor said, I call BS. Whether or not it is BS, that is the public messaging. And perception is reality when it comes to the global stage. And so this could be used, again, as an onus for greater involvement. Good morning, Bug Out Bob. Could be used for greater involvement of NATO forces in and around Ukraine. And in Ukraine is where things get weird. Morning, tribesmen. Because if NATO forces go into Ukraine, we are now intervening in Putin's police action, liberation of Ukraine, as he's called it. And now we have direct conflict between East and West. And that could absolutely contribute to an escalation of force at this point. So we've gone NATO. I should be careful how I define we, because there's a lot of definitions I have for we that do not include NATO at all. But NATO has now gone from saying, yeah, it's looking pretty bad over there in Ukraine. Y'all don't come to Poland or anywhere else west of Ukraine. That'd be really bad for you too. It's getting pretty bad in Ukraine. I guess we got to go in there and do some stuff. They haven't officially said they're going to go to Ukraine and do some stuff, but they're now building the story, the backstory as to why they would, so they can get a mandate, public support to go in and intervene. So keep an eye on that. President Zelensky has continued to ask NATO to establish a no-fly zone. By the way, Vladimir Zelensky is a scumbag. Ukrainian leadership is a bunch of scumbags. And the amount of people, uninformed influencers on the internet that are putting Volodymyr Zelensky up on a pedestal as if he's some bastion of conservatism and somebody that should be praised is sickening. Do your homework. They're all politicians. And just because he's an actor, a clown, literally and figuratively, who's learned how to play a good politician, they're all playing their roles, homie. They're all playing their roles. He's a scumbag. Do not, first of all, bow to no man. Elevate no man. Yeshua himself in the book of Matthew says, why do you call me good? There is none good but Elohim. So if that was from the Redeemer of the world, let's maybe quit trying to sit on the lap of Volodymyr Zelensky, okay? So, President Zelensky continued to ask NATO to establish a no-fly zone. Quote, we repeat every day, close the sky over Ukraine. Close for all Russian missiles, for Russian combat aircraft, for all their terrorists, end quote. U.S. Congressman Adam Kinzinger supported the idea last Thursday, tweeting, quote, I fear if this continues, we will have to intervene in a bigger way, end quote. You see how the stage is being set here? And I want you, Bear Nation, I want you boys and girls, you ladies and gentlemen, to perceive things, to view things through the lens of strategic, not tactical, big picture, not micro picture. Yes, there's lots of reporting coming out of Ukraine, and the vast majority of it is questionable at best. And we could get all wrapped around the axles. Did you see they set a nuclear facility on fire? No, they set the building next to the nuclear facility on fire. Simmer down. Okay? I want you to look at the big picture stuff, the strategic stuff. How does this affect your daily life? What can you do about it? What are you going to do with this information and this intelligence? Not get your pulse rate up, not kick your blood pressure through the roof where you get that vein sticking out the side of your head. Right? None of that. No fear mongering, no doomer porn. Receive the information through the lens of how can I make this actionable and what can I do productive with it. Okay? But the powers that be, again, are starting to attempt to build a mandate to gain approval from the populace to go to war. Why war? Global economy's in the tank. Why? Plandemic. Why? Great reset. War is profitable. War is profitable. Also, war is a game of resources, and resources are tightening up greatly around the world right now. Let your OODA loop breathe. Exactly. Who said that? Ehud Sword. That's exactly right. Ehud Sword. Let your OODA loop breathe. War is a game of resources, and resources are tightening on the world stage. Food and fuel. It takes security to acquire and defend those things. War is a game of resources. So, back to the brief. U.S. Congressman Adam Kinzinger supported the idea last Thursday, tweeting, "I fear if this continues, we will have to intervene in a bigger way." This is a weather belt. He's going to float that idea. They're going to see how people respond to that idea, and it's going to be used to take the temperature of the American populace, as these statements all around the world, made by politicians all around the world, are being used to take the temperatures of their populace to gain this mandate for increased Western action in and around Ukraine. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, on the other hand, said, quote, "To actually implement something like a no-fly zone is to send NATO planes into Ukrainian airspace and to shoot down Russian planes, and that could lead to a full-fledged war in Europe," end quote. And he's correct. But some will say, but we have to. We don't have to do anything. False narrative. Don't get caught up in the false narrative. You have to, A or B. No, I don't even have to sit down at the table and play your game. I'm not even looking for C, D, and E options. I'm just like, your game's stupid. I'm not playing. Okay? NATO agreed, declining to establish a no-fly zone over Europe. Its Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg pointing out, "We have a responsibility as NATO allies to prevent this war from escalating beyond Ukraine, because that would be even more dangerous, more devastating, and would cause even more human suffering." So understand, NATO, put together in 1949. The reason it was assembled in 1949 was because the burgeoning Russian threat of nuclear war. Is a guy named Joseph Stalin. He's a scumbag, kind of a big deal on the world stage. And the USSR, Russia, see, people miss this. There was an entire subset of the American leadership after World War II. We knew in 1945 that our next war would be with Russia. We knew this beyond a shadow of a doubt. And there were people in August of 1945 saying, specifically General Patton, saying, "Hey, we're already forward deployed. We've already got our boys over there. They're already equipped. We should just leave Germany and head to Russia right now." Right now. Man on a mission, that's right. Patton told us. Right now. Let's just go get the Russians right now, because there's only two world superpowers that come out of this. And really, Russia did not do economically well in World War II. But they were emerging on the world stage. America did great in World War II. It's what put us on the world stage. And so we've known for 80 years there's a war coming with Russia. And so in 49, NATO was put together because as the Russians started building the Russian Federation, the USSR, and creeping westward, these European countries needed some security backstop, an agreement, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, to say an attack on one, Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all. We need a backstop here against Russian aggression. Remind you, the Russians have a deep-seated psychosis about sneak attacks, right? Like they hate being ambushed, they hate being attacked. And that's why, that's a big part of why, Putin is losing his ever-loving mind by having all these NATO nations now right on the border of Russia. So this isn't like, this didn't start last week. This didn't start in 2014 when Russia took over Crimea, the annexation of Crimea. This was taking place in 1942, solidified by 1945. The chess pieces started being put on the board in 1949. We know this has been coming. And one of the things that has been a major contributing factor then and now is the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Mutually assured destruction, the Cold War, and we can dive deep on that, and maybe today's not the day that we do that, but we can dive deep on that. A lot of people in the chat this morning, I'm trying not to read the comments, honestly, because they're distracting. Russia never creeped west. USSR, homeboy. Well, it wasn't Russia, it was USSR. All right, semantics, whatever, homie. Here's the point. This has been coming for a long time, and the threat of nuclear holocaust, mutually assured destruction, has been the one thing that has really kept this thing from teetering out of control. So, to that point, I don't think that there's a high likelihood of the deployment of nuclear weapons right now. So here's the thing. Strategic Air Command was developed by the U.S. Air Force, right? It was developed by the U.S. Air Force with the concept that we were going to take about 200 of our then 300 nuclear weapons, and in one blitzkrieg attack with strategic bombers, bomb the ever-loving snot out of Russian cities. Just wipe them off the map in one day. In one day, they'd just be gone. Because we had long-range bombers, and the Russians didn't. Okay? So, but as Russian force has been permitted to escalate and American force has escalated, we have this mutually assured destruction thing. The old doctrine of wipe them off the face of the earth day one has been done away with. This was a 1950s, 1960s, 1970s concept, but really by the mid to late 70s, that starts going away. That's where you see the development of like tactical nukes and the nuclear bazooka, the Davy Crockett and things like that, because we started realizing we'd be trading cities for cities, right? You bomb Moscow, we bomb DC, right? You bomb Kiev, we bomb LA, right? Blah, 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 back and forth, back and forth. If you look at what the Russians are doing now currently in Ukraine, what are they doing? They're encircling. They're encircling the cities that they want to control because they want to have a city to control. That may be asterisk a contributing factor as to why we haven't seen massive amounts of Russian artillery. Because if you destroy the thing you're trying to control, now you are the proud owner of rubble, and that's a problem. If you're trying to forget win hearts and minds, if you're trying to absorb the infrastructure, but you destroy all the infrastructure in the process, what have you gained? Your cost-benefit analysis gets all skewed. You've spilled a whole bunch of your own blood for the sake of not actually having any war spoils at this point. So, a little strategic, philosophical, but things to consider. Back to the brief. President Volodymyr Zelensky responded to NATO's refusal, quote, refusal of a no-fly zone. All the people who will die from this day will also die because of you, because of your weakness, because of your disunity, end quote, and called the lack of action to be, quote, the green light for further bombing of Ukrainian towns and villages, refusing to make a no-fly zone. Again, the rhetoric is amping up. It's looking like in Eastern Europe there's going to be another conflict. Still, the world is not turning a blind eye to Kiev. MasterCard and Visa have suspended operations in Russia. Poland has agreed to supply fighter planes to the Ukraine with the guarantee that the US will provide jets to backfill the Polish fleet. The UK has pledged more aid in the form of defensive weapons and non-lethal aid. And for the first time in history, the European Union is financing the donation of arms for Kiev to the tune of 450 million euros. That's pushing $1 billion worth of arms financed by the European Union going to Ukraine. Many countries, including Canada, the Czech Republic, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and even the historically neutral Sweden and Finland are sending weapons, ammunition, fuel, field rations, and more. Even Elon Musk supplied Ukraine with Starlink services to provide connection to satellite internet signal amid the invasion-related internet disruptions. Now, we've got more to talk about here, but let's just take a brief moment to look at this little list of things that are being supplied. Practical applicability for you as the preparedness-minded individual in the United States of America, where currently, praise the Most High, bombs are not falling on top of us, okay? What should I be stacking? Well, let's see. What are they stacking? Weapons, ammunition, fuel, rations, commo, logistical items. Yeah, basic preparedness, man. Basic preparedness. I saw somebody in the comments said, nice guns. Yeah, they are nice guns. You know what? I have, pound for pound, 100, maybe 1,000 times more food than I do guns, pound for pound. These are not ultimately how we want to solve problems, okay? Not ultimately how we want to solve problems. Firearms. Should we have access to them? Absolutely. We have a God-given constitutionally protected right to have access to them. But if you have to just sling lead every day of your meager existence after the balloon goes up, man, you live in the wrong place and your tactics suck, right? So, just another tool in the toolkit. Like, I don't get all spun up about all my awesome Klein electrical tools in my tool bag, right? Oh man, is that the 18-inch cold hammer forged line pliers with the replaceable jaw set? Shut up. The tools in the toolkit. Do your job. And there's so much more to doing the job than the tool bag. You got to know how to do the job, right? You need time on the job site. You got to learn from people that know more than you do. You have to know how to do it here. Physical, visceral, tactile with your hands. Where you're going to eat, where you're going to sleep, where you're going to poo, how you're going to grow more food, how you're going to get more water, okay? How you're going to move, how you're going to communicate, how you're going to deal with injuries and acute medical issues, so forth and so on. That's what you need to be thinking about, not, did you see what happened in Ukraine? Yeah. Lots of lessons to learn, lots of things to pay attention to, but if you are so wrapped up on this one thing, you're missing the whole overarching strategic picture. For countries neighboring Ukraine, the concerns over the war machine marching towards their borders are glaringly evident. Moldova, a small country that has accepted about 120,000 refugees, which is also a puppet state of Russia, from neighboring Ukraine, applied for EU membership on the 3rd. That's interesting. Well, yeah, they're trying to leave the Russian sphere of influence. Maybe they're going to be a snitch. Think about that. Go ahead, Moldova, join the EU. The Russians would love to have some people on the inside of what's going on inside of there. See, again, you're thinking tactically, not strategically. So did Georgia applied to the EU. The request to these two countries come after Ukraine's urgent plea for immediate EU membership last Tuesday. Now, if you're on Patreon, patreon.com, search for Bear Independent, you will find the relevant links to everything that we just discussed. And if you're not on Patreon, you won't. Oofda. Now, let's see here. a few articles from RT, Russian State Propaganda. Thank you for the $10 bill, whoever that was. Thanks, Bear. Really been enjoying the Patreon content lately. A lot of good advice. The Bible studies have been great. Thank you, K-Roach. I appreciate you. And good morning to all the Blue Wrenches as well. Denmark to hold historic referendum on abandoning EU defense opt-out. So thus far, Denmark has said, hey guys, we love you guys, but we're not joining any European Union defensive measures. We're not involved. Like, we got too much other Danish stuff to do, like put cheese inside a pastry and bake them. You know, like, we're, you know, we love you, but we're not going to come play. And now they're saying, maybe this is the Mastiff FSA eligible? Yes, Christopher Soto, every kit at refugemedical.com is HSA and FSA eligible. Get them while you can. Get them while you can. So now Denmark's saying, we need to abandon this concept of us not getting involved in conflict because it looks like conflict's coming to us. Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, announced on Sunday that the country will hold a referendum on June 1st to scrap the opt-out from the European Union defense policy, declaring that historic times call for historic decisions. The Danish leader's statement came as she declared that Putin's pointless and brutal attack on Ukraine has heralded a new era in Europe, calling it a test of strength for everything we believe in, our values, democracy, human rights, peace, and freedom. Frederiksen urged voters to back abandoning the defense of the defense opt-out, calling it a values-based decision, citing how it will allow Denmark to work in greater tandem with its European neighbors. Joining the EU's common security and defense policy would see Denmark join EU military exercises and work with the bloc to develop and acquire military capabilities. So there's an indicator for you. It's also important to understand that we are, well, up until recently, have been living in a period of time that historians have referred to as the long peace. The long peace. Bless you, Carrie Stunnett. Appreciate you. The long peace. Since 1945. August 6th and August 9th, 1945. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The only two uses of nuclear weapons during military actions. The long peace. We've had police actions. We've had the global war on terror. We've had the Korean War, the Vietnam War. None of which, and I am taking nothing away from the sacrifice that the men and women in uniform have made during those conflicts, none of which even remotely compares to, say, the beach landing at Normandy. Okay, so on the scale of conflict, it's been a relatively peaceful time, which is an anomaly in the history of humanity. And so, to the extent that you're spun up about what's happening in Ukraine, and soon to be, in my opinion, probably outside the boundaries of Ukraine, thus the title of today's video, yeah, conflict, global conflict, probable, yeah. The fact that it hasn't happened yet is the anomaly. And this gets all the way back to, we've talked about this over and over again, this system that we live in is fragile. This long peace is fragile. It's not built to last because we're dealing with flawed human beings who have literally the ability to destroy the world as we know it at their fingertips, to just start pressing big red buttons, right? So, I need to not look at the chat. You guys are... There's like 47 different conversations going on in the chat this morning and it's distracting me. So I'm going to not do that anymore. I'm going to look at the camera instead. So the anomaly here is the peace, not the war. And that means that the safety and prosperity that you've experienced thus far is the anomaly, not average, regular course of human existence, which means we need to return to the old ways. The way we used to do things. Grow your own food. Serve your own community. Pull your own security. Raise your own children. think your own thoughts, feel your own feelings, believe your own beliefs. Dare I say, read your own Bible. Quit farming shit out to everybody else and start taking personal responsibility again. The indicators are everywhere. They're everywhere. And if you don't have eyes to see and ears to hear, I can't help you. I'm bad at apologetics. I'm not trying to talk people into whether or not you need to be prepared. My assumption is if you're here, you already agree that you need to be prepared. How prepared or how to prepare, we might vary in opinion on that. You might have different life experiences that I do that lead you down a separate path or a divergent path of preparedness than I do, and that's okay. But I'm not trying to talk you into this thing at this point. I don't understand how anybody with half a brain in their head can't look around and go, oh, wow, this is pretty bad. I should probably start doing stuff. Wow, gas is up over $4 a gallon. Food is up 30%. Can't buy ammo. Damn, they're trying to take guns away again. Can't say what I want to say on the internet. People be dying over in Eastern Europe. It's looking like 2, if not 3 global superpowers are going to start mixing it up over in Eastern Europe again. They just tried to spend 2 years telling everybody they got to do this thing that nobody wants to do. There's weak leadership in the United States and elsewhere. Things are pretty bad. There's no fertilizer to grow food. There's no diesel exhaust fluid to transport the food. And the people that would transport the food are being told they can't do their jobs because they won't do this thing. Yeah, the fragility of the system is not one of these things that I think really needs to be addressed over and over and over again. It's just there. It's just there. So, how people don't see it, I don't know. Now, Russia is telling Ukraine that, hey, Ukrainian refugees can evacuate to Russia and Belarus. And Ukraine said, that's cute, kiss our ass, negative. So there's some back and forth there as well. The vast majority of these refugees are ending up in Poland, which is going to make things interesting. I think Poland has the potential to become another area of conflict ongoing in Eastern Europe. A brief overview of just some of the articles from the war zone, the titles of Poland isn't interested in transferring its MiG-29s to Ukraine. So it's sending jets, just not their MiG-29s to Ukraine. The Russians, their rear armored columns and their support vehicles, they're armoring their vehicles with logs. They're cutting down logs from the forest and strapping logs to them to keep small arms and explosive ordnance from being able to get through their thin armor or just their thin skin to keep them from blowing up. Russian Air Force is not doing so great over Ukraine because Ukraine has all types of manpads, shoulder-launched rockets, and Russia has yet to establish air power superiority, which is insane, which leads to the concept that Russia is going to increase their use of artillery, which is standard Russian doctrine. So we'll see what happens there. Although the general consensus is Russia's not doing as good in Ukraine as everybody thought they were going to, myself included. I was of the opinion that everybody in Ukraine would be speaking Russian right now rather than Ukrainian by this point. But it looks like the Russian logistics system is not keeping up with their warfare ambitions. And a lot of this also is being attributed to a staunch resistance being put up by the Ukrainian civilian resistance. So, I don't know how much of that is factual or not. I think the Russians maybe aren't as good at this as we all thought they were. Maybe they used to be. I know the language is pretty close, but it's not the same. Hey, Adat Smith, you look like an idiot when you use the phrase demon rats. I guess we're going to talk about this for a moment. I've talked about this before, but we're going to talk about it again. The phrase demon rats? Well, the demon rats, we all know you're trying to say Democrats. Say Democrat, dumbass. By the way, the Republicans aren't any better, okay? So again, you're playing within a false paradigm. They're all on the same team, and you're not on it. You are not on the team. They pander to you to make you think that you're on the team, but you're not on the team. They are all on the same team. You see how many people stood up and clapped at the State of the Union? They're all on the same team, bro. And you're not on it. They're all getting rich in D.C. Just some of them say, we're going to take guns away. And then the liberals go, yeah. And then some of them go, no, we're not. We're going to defend the Constitution. And then all the conservatives go, yeah. And the whole time they're fleecing the entire world. And they got you wrapped up in their stupid, bullshit, false paradigm. Think bigger. Think better. Don't be a juvenile. The demon rats. Come on, bro. Come on. What are you, in kindergarten? You eat poop for breakfast. Oh, that's cute. That's cute. Right? Elevate your thinking. And in a bit of intel from the South Pacific, the U.S. is accused of trying to create another NATO. In the Indo-Pacific region, China's foreign minister has said this is not a chessboard for geopolitical contest. Not by the Americans, apparently. It's certainly okay if China uses it as a chessboard for geopolitical contest, but not for the United States, says China. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has suggested that the real goal of the United States strategy in the Indo-Pacific region is to establish a new version of NATO, warning the White House that any attempt to do so would be thwarted. Speaking on the sidelines on the 13th National People's Congress on Monday, Wang discouraged Washington from acting in a way that would cause instability in the region amid territorial disputes between China and other nations. In other words, yo, U.S., you don't even live over here. You stay on your side of the fence and keep your nose out of our business. I'm paraphrasing. New Living Bear translation. Quote, the Asia Pacific is a promising land for cooperation and development, not a chessboard for geopolitical contest, Wang said. Speaking of Wang, I gotta piss. I'll be right back. Y'all look at the wall for a few seconds. Back to what Wang said. Criticizing the U.S., Wang claimed the American approach is only aimed at upholding dominance through bloc politics in the area, which Beijing believes will undermine the association of Southeast Asian nations, political and economic unity that is already in place. Yes, because when I think of the Indo-Pacific region, I totally think of political and economic unity. Right? You guys too, right? That's what I think in the Indo-Pac, political and economic unity. There was a brief article that I saw earlier where the Australians are calling out the Chinese for not criticizing the Russians, saying, hey, China's the only world, and this is interesting, the Australians are saying that China's the only world superpower that can peace, Shentao. China is the only world superpower that can balance the Russians, said the Australians. That's fun. Yeah, there's an indicator. Wang also said, we must adhere to the principle of indivisible security and accommodate the legitimate security concerns of the parties involved, speaking of Russia and Ukraine, adding that disputes must be settled by peaceful means through dialogue and negotiation. Yeah, dialogue and negotiation. Okay, homie. So, things are looking like there will be an escalation of global conflict in Eastern Europe. If NATO gets directly involved, as I talked about earlier, the powers that be in Ukraine, even here in the United States, within NATO, are all starting to test the waters, take the temperature of their constituency for direct involvement in Ukraine. If that happens, my guess is we get into global conflict. And large-scale conventional conflict is really what the Russian military is built for, to grind targets to dust. Can they do that? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Based upon what we're seeing in Ukraine, maybe not. But maybe they decide, again, just spitballing here, maybe they decide, yeah, you know what? It's not going so hot in Ukraine. This conventional war that we thought we were good at, not so much. Bring in the strategic bombers. LA looks like a juicy target. Who knows? Who knows? I don't. But as we continue to get indicators and intel, I'm happy to bring them to you. That's what the Bear Brief is. And this concludes the portion of the brief where I talk about the world, and now I'm going to talk about us. And so if you don't like it when I talk about how to support the show, this is your clue to beat feet. Have a blessed day. Get out of here. Time to go. But if you want to know how to support the show, stick around. RefugeMedical.com. Handmade, made in America, guaranteed forever. First aid kits for military, law enforcement, EMS, firefighters, and you, the civilian sheepdog. 34 lives saved. 34 lives saved. And before I tell you about number 34, we've gotten, just this last week, a whole bunch of contact from people that have rendered aid, including a life that we're not counting. We don't count a life saved unless it is unequivocally a life saved. But one was a young child, roughly 6 years old, ejected from a motor vehicle accident. There was a gentleman there who had a Bearfact Guts refill, and he was able to take the Z-Fold combat gauze and press it against the grievous head injury that this child had, and hold pressure on the wound with the combat gauze while cradling the child in his arms, who was thrown from the vehicle during this motor vehicle accident, until law enforcement and EMS was able to get there. This is why I tell you guys all the time, it doesn't matter. If you're somebody who wears body armor for a living, you know you need to have medical. If you're not somebody that wears body armor for a living, a lot of times you're like, why do I need one of these kits? Statistically, the most dangerous thing you do is drive. And statistically, 9 out of 10, 91% of preventable deaths in the United States is bleeding. So if you're going to be driving, if you have a vehicle, and you have a body that pumps blood, you need a bleeding control kit. And I don't mean some horseshit piece of garbage My Medic kit. I mean a real trauma kit. So, number 34. So this person has asked to remain anonymous, so I won't share their personal information, but they said, we decided to go up in the mountains about 2 months ago on a wilderness training. And we just found out about this. On a wilderness training excursion. We were bored, honestly. And about day 2, we made it up to the peak and figured we would make camp. Well, he, anonymous person, decided to go look for firewood while I set up the tents and broke apart the rations. Maybe half an hour later, I hear him screaming bloody murder. Turns out he wasn't watching his footing as he was climbing up a pine and lost all grip. As he came down on a broken branch stump, so a stub of a broken pine branch, he climbed a tree, fell off a tree, stump of a broken pine branch. Bow hunters, anybody? Chainsaw operators, arborists, loggers, everybody listening? Turns out he wasn't watching his footing as he was climbing up a pine and lost all grip. As he came down on a broken branch stump that had just happened to be sharp enough to slice his leg from knee to hip. I grabbed my pack with my medical supplies from you guys and my rifle and headed over to where I thought he was, and he was easily spottable by the steam coming off of him. Luckily, he missed the main artery, but the laceration was deep. I rinsed it out as fast as I could and as best as I could after having to apply 2 tourniquets to his hip area. The quick clot finished off the residual bleeding. The military surgical kit helped me pull and cut away any other debris A lot of splintered pine bark. This is an adventure kit that this guy used. So the military surgical kit helped me pull and cut away any other debris, lots of splintered pine bark, and I was able to suture the wound with the 76 suture kit that I got from y'all. I ended up using all of them, 2 layers of stitches, all of my gauze, about 6 rolls, a splint, and we used a cell phone to call it in. If it wouldn't have been for Refuge Medical and all the supplies I was able to get a hold of, I don't know if he would have made it. I'm telling you, if you use 2 tourniquets and Z-fold gauze and 6 rolls of Kerlix and all of your sutures and a splint and you're in the woods, you wouldn't have made it. You wouldn't have made it. So, praise the Most High. 34 lives saved. And guys and girls, this is why we do this. This is why we do this. Okay? This is the SOB. I have these in stock. I have, no, I lied to you. I don't have these in stock, but I'm getting more. I have 7 POs out to Sojourn Gear on these right now, so they will ship pretty quick. Adventure kits, same thing that was used to save life number 34. I have those. We ordered a massive amount of stuff from North American Rescue and TACMed Solutions and everybody else this past Friday because we were told by our suppliers, get it today, because I cannot guarantee after today if you will be able to get it again for the foreseeable future because of conflict in Ukraine. And so we ordered a ton, not a ton, literal tons of stuff, a semi-load of stuff for y'all, okay? For y'all. HSA and FSA is 100% eligible. You can use it for everything in the store. If you have any particular questions on that, you can email sales@refugemedical.com. Buckets are shipping out fast, the wound care bucket, so we have all that stuff in stock. If you need a wound care bucket or a dozen of them, you know, with this global conflict that's coming, I'd get them. I mean it. I love it, but I can't afford it yet, Bear. Brad, I totally understand. Get a tourniquet, a pressure bandage, and 2 packages of compressed gauze. Run you about 45 bucks. You can get the all the individual components from refugemedical.com as well. Okay? You can get all that at refugemedical.com. Use promo code BEARNATION. You get free shipping on your entire order. You may just save a life. Okay? You may just save a life. Bear Nation gets you free shipping. And Bear Nation at refugetraining.com also gets you 5% off every training class we have. So you need to not just have the kit, you need to know how to use the kit, right? Okay, I got a tourniquet on here. What do I do with it? Not entirely sure. Refuge Training. You pop this open, pull this out. You got your little suitcase right here. And you've got your pressure bandage. Refuge Training teaches you how to use that. Your Z-fold combat gauze. Refuge Training teaches you how to use that. Your hyphen chest seals and your nasopharyngeal airway. Refuge Training. Press gauze for wound packing. Refuge Training. You getting the point here? There's, I don't know, 15 or 16 dates up right now all across the country at refugetraining.com. If you use promo code BEARNATION, you get 5% off your order at Refuge Training. And if there's a class within a half a day's drive of where you are, that's your class. That's the place for you to go. And so we greatly appreciate y'all supporting our small businesses. And man, we couldn't do it without y'all. I'm telling you, everything that I'm seeing on my end, supply chain wise, when my vendors are calling me nervous, I'm like, okay. Luckily for y'all, we're preppers. We don't have a problem with buying a bunch of stuff and putting it on the shelf. And so that's how we're able to fill orders right now. And so refugemedical.com. Check us out. Support American small businesses. There's 18 families now that eat because of this right here. Refugemedical.com. 34 lives saved. I appreciate y'all very much. I hope y'all have a blessed day. I got to go. Shalom. Hit the button, Bear. I'm working on it. It's a little tiny button. I got these big old fingers.